What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Crush City Territory. I'm Chandler Rome here with Tyler Stafford. It is arbitration day, a huge day for people that are perpetually online, a huge day for people that like tweeting contests because all of the reporters that cover baseball for a living get all the information from like the same people, and it's just a race to see who can tweet it out the fastest. Robert Murray of Fansided, congratulations to him. He's got quick Twitter fingers, man.
I believe his name is by Robert Murray, right?
By Robert Murray, if you'd like to follow him on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling that platform now. Works for Fansided. Does a great job. Was owning arbitration today. It is still not over, actually. 6 of the Astros, 7 arbitration eligible players have settled, which means they will not go to an arbitration hearing. The only one as of this recording that has not settled is Framber Valdez, who was projected to make $17.8 million. That doesn't mean they're taking him to a hearing. It just means as of this moment, as we're recording this, they haven't settled yet. They can still negotiate, but a lot of weird stuff goes on in arbitration. And Tyler, we were talking before we started this up. It seems like you have questions about this whole process. I'm not sure I can really answer them, but what fascinates you about arbitration?
It's such a weird just quirk of baseball. I'm sure maybe there's something like this in other sports, but it's obviously pretty popular in baseball, and it's just so interesting to me. First off, how close you typically are on numbers, right? Like what'll happen is if they go to arbitration, you find out after like, oh, this player submitted $5 million and the Astros submitted $4 million. And then the arbiter, which is it a judge? Is it like an actual judge, or is it just some dude? Like who is deciding who gets which amount of money?
It is an arbiter. The players side presents his case, the team side presents their case, and then like I believe it's a panel of 3. I could be wrong on that. I should have probably looked that up before this started, but it is a neutral arbiter that decides which amount of money they're going to make, and it's a very odd dynamic. You mentioned the amount of money is sometimes not that much. Like you said $1 million. Like there have been times where players have gone to hearings over like 200 grand. And you kind of ask yourself, like, why can't these billionaires that own the team just, kick in the 200 grand and avoid this? Because if you take a player to an arbitration hearing, they can say all they want after about how professional it was and about, no bad blood, no hard feelings. Like inherently, you're going into this and hearing your employer say, here's why you deserve to make less money. And the way that they are presenting that is, here's why we think you're not as good as you think you are. Like in no way can that leave like zero ill will. So it's a fascinating little exercise. And it's one that, the one weird thing that I think a lot of people maybe don't grasp, there are some players that go into the arbitration process like it doesn't matter what the team offers, it doesn't matter what it is, they are going to a hearing no matter what, for the sole reason that they want to make sure, like they're doing it on behalf of their fellow players. They want to, the players union is pretty strong, and they want to make sure that there's no tomfoolery going on, that there's nothing untoward happening in these hearings. So there are players that will go for no other reason than to make sure things are. And I would love, and Zach Greinke did this. Zach Greinke famously sat in on Jake Odorizzi's arbitration hearing. I would love to sit in on one of those because it is probably a fascinating exercise.
Yeah, that's for real, unironically, like one of my, that's up there with sitting courtside at a basketball game. I would love to sit in. Do you think that they're like, did they put a lot of effort into the PowerPoint slides? Do you think they have like cool transitions that's like, he only had this many RBIs and look what everybody else is, and then there's like a sweet slide transition? Are they just handing out pamphlets? Like, what does this look like in there?
Oh, I've seen an agent that has prepared an arbitration case for his client has showed me what they go in with, and it is like a full book. Like, I'm not going to name the player, but I saw a cover of, I wouldn't call it a book. It was bigger than a pamphlet, but smaller than a book. It was in a binder, and like the cover had a picture of this player, had a bunch of their stats all around, had to the point where agents like will actively read media coverage throughout the season to call quotes that managers or GMs or fellow players give about their clients to include in the arbitration booklet that they're presenting to, make their case. If a GM during the season says, "Oh, we have the best reliever in baseball in our bullpen," or "We have the best hitter in baseball in the middle of our lineup," like, you can bet that that's going to make it into an arbitration booklet as they're arguing why a player deserves to make a ton of money. But, if I was going to go sit into one of these hearings, like, I wonder, do they have like concession stands? Like, do they have a bar? Like, I would love to, sip a cocktail, listen to someone from the Astros, like, explain to me why Brian Abreu deserves to make less money while he's one of the best relievers in baseball. Just as an aside, Brian Abreu settled. He is not going to an arbitration hearing, but I think that'd be fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's normally over such a small amount of money. And I would assume it's the owners are in their head thinking they're doing the same thing that the players are doing, of like, we're going to like protect this process of, whatever. But every time I'm like, just give them the amount of money that they think they're going to make in arbitration. It can't be that much more. And it can't be worth putting a presentation together explaining why this guy who you're going to have under contract either way is going to play for you. Like, just give them that amount of money. Like, I don't understand why there's ever like, who on the team is going like on the team side. Obviously agents are putting together the player side, but is it like GM? Is it like an intern? Like, who's there presenting the case?
Usually, it is not the GM. Like, Dana Brown's not going to go in there and do it. Jeff Luhnow, James Click, like, they did not go in and present the cases themselves. There's usually an AGM, an assistant general manager, or someone in the baseball operations department that their entire job this part of the year is arbitration. So they will go in and they will run the case. They will present the team side, and everything you hear after all these cases, like, "Oh, it's so professional," and they didn't denigrate me, they didn't insult me or anything. But like, to me, Ty, like, inherently it's insulting. Like, if I'm going in there and saying I'm worth this much money, and my employer is like, "Oh, well, you struck out in that big at bat in mid-September when we were in a pennant race, so I think you probably should get like $100,000 less." Like, that'd be tough for me to hear.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I got to turn off YouTube comments. Speaking of the arbiter, shout out our buddy down there. But it is difficult to deal with that, and it really is such a fascinating process. And yeah, I mean, I would love at some point. So if somebody out there knows someone who's been involved in the arbitration process and wants to chat with them, I have a million questions. Like, are the arbiters baseball people? Are they like former executives? Are they just like legal people that they're pulling off the street? Are they having to explain what these stats are? Like, what's happening in there?
It is largely, like, arbitration in general is largely a comparison. This is a compare, like, they will compare, and it's all about how much service time you have, and it's all about like what a guy in his first year of ARB got as comparing to you. So let's pull just a random player, Jeremy Pena, who settled for $4.1 million, is not going to a hearing. The way that they probably talked about this was, all right, they compared Jeremy Pena to other shortstops in baseball, and they compared Jeremy Pena to other shortstops in their first year of arbitration eligibility. And that's how they kind of come to these numbers. And I mean, it is a method to suppress salaries in some ways. I mean, Jeremy Pena his market value is far higher than $4.1 million. Brian Abreu's market value, far, 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 far higher than the $3.45 million he settled for. It is, it's one of those, and I don't want this to act like we're coming down on the Astros. Like all 30 teams do this. This is not an Astros problem. This is not something that the Astros are doing that's wrong. It is just, it's how the business works, and it's a slimy side of it, and it's a side that kind of reminds you that, you know, for as much as we love baseball for the game it is and it's America's pastime, like, this is a business at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. So, okay, so you said Framber is still going. We don't know. What'd you say was projected 17.8?
So MLB trade rumors projected he would make 17.8 million. Going with the other 7 guys that have settled, or this other 6 guys that have settled, Mauricio Dubon got more than his projection. Chas McCormick got more than his projection. Isaac Paredes got less. Jeremy Pena got less. Brian Abreu got less. So the projections kind of are vary either way, but Framber Valdez is going to make a lot of money. Either way, no matter how this ends for him, whether they take him to a hearing or not, he's going to make a lot of money. He's going to make upwards of $17 million, somewhere in that ballpark.
But essentially what happens is the team says, you know, we think Framber is worth, even if it's 17.8, if they say, yeah, we think he's worth 17.8, the player then can submit any number, right? But then the arbiter chooses one or the other. It's not like they come to the middle. So you do want to have like a realistic number. Is that how it works?
So the way it works is both sides. So today at noon, was the deadline for both sides to exchange figures. So that's like the one, like the Astros say, all right, here's our figure for Framber Valdez. Framber Valdez's representatives at Octagon say, all right, here's our figure for it. And then from that point on, they can try to negotiate. They can try to get down to the middle, get down to a point where they feel comfortable. If they can't come to an agreement, then they will file both of those numbers officially and go to a hearing. And within the hearing, he gets paid either number. It is not a situation where they can settle in the middle. They either say the team won the hearing or Framber Valdez won the hearing, and they get the money that they put up there. So again, not saying that's going to happen. For all we know, they could be, negotiating right now, and Framber Valdez could settle and not go to a hearing. We will know that by the end of the day. We won't know it. We won't know it by the time this podcast wraps, probably, unfortunately. Speaking of high-paid pitchers, speaking of pitchers that make a lot of money, Justin Verlander is going to make less money than he's been making, but is going to make $15 million next year to pitch for the San Francisco Giants. That news coming a couple of days, I believe on Wednesday night, that news came out that Justin Verlander is going to get a 1-year deal to go to the San Francisco Giants, and for a second time, end his Astros tenure. As long as Jim Crane owns the team, and as long as Jim Crane is involved, never rule out they're going to trade for him, because Jim Crane and Justin Verlander are very close. I'm quite frankly a little bit surprised that Justin Verlander's not back with the Astros, given how close he and Crane are. But it's kind of clear that it was going this way toward the end of the year. Obviously, Justin Verlander did not have the season that he thought he would have with the injury and everything. He's going to be 42 years old. He said he wants to pitch till he's 45. I would never doubt him. Tyler, I can't imagine you were very surprised that Justin Verlander is going to pitch elsewhere next year.
No, I mean, one, just as we've talked about, the Astros don't have $10-15 million to spend without going over the CBT, but also they have they've got a firm kind of top of the rotation, but then they really have 6 or 7 guys that they've got to kind of figure out who's going to fill out the rest of the rotation. And whether he's performing or not, Justin Verlander is, as long as he's healthy, he's pitching every 5th day, which takes away the ability to kind of gauge who do you have in your rotation. So, I mean, you're right. It definitely feels like one of those deals where come July, once the Astros rotation kind of settles, you may give the Giants a call and say, all right, we'll take on the rest of this now. We'll pay $6 million, whatever for Verlander. But now we know kind of what this rotation looks like, where he would fit in. Because, last year I think everyone handled it well because of the injury that Verlander was not going to, play a part in the playoff rotation, or at least an important part. But if he's not injured, that's a different story, right? Like if he pitches 180 innings, but it's at a 4.5 ERA, like, can you not start him? I don't think so. I think you have to just let him pitch, and I don't know that you want to be tied to that necessarily if you're the Astros.
I think you put it well, that it was it was easy. It was an easier conversation for everyone than it would appear on paper. Like Justin Verlander in September knew that he couldn't pitch in a playoff game. And I think everyone in there with a brain knew that. And I don't think it was this big shock when Joe Espada had to go up to him before the wild card series and say, "Hey, you're not on the roster." Like, I think everyone kind of knew that. And Justin Verlander's a pro. Like, he fully outright acknowledged toward the end of the year that he wasn't getting people out. And it wasn't even so much that, like, he had teammates pitching better than him. Yusei Kikuchi, Hunter Brown, Framber Valdez, Ronel Blanco, Spencer, like, they were all pitching better than him. And you're not going to put Justin Verlander in the bullpen. He's made one career regular season relief appearance he's made 0 career regular season relief appearances. He's made one in the playoffs. I know you probably recall that one. But I'm glad I have you for this question, because you were here when they traded for Justin Verlander the first time.
Best day ever.
And so the question I'm about to ask is no offense to Jose Altuve, is no offense to the many, many faces of this era of Astros baseball. But I wonder, is Justin Verlander the most impactful player of this Astros golden era?
I think so. I don't even know that you could question it. I think when they made that trade, first off, I'm sure everyone remembers, but it came together like 2 seconds before the old August deadline. So, he'd gone through waivers. So, I mean, I think he made like 6 starts in the regular season for the Astros that year before pitching in the playoffs. But, man, when that went through, it was one of those things where you're like, not only are you getting a Hall of Famer, he'd not been great for 2 years. He had a really good stretch, and obviously he talks about that where, he finally got healthy, he made some adjustments, he was able to really put himself back together. But regardless, it was like, oh, the Astros are for real. Like, you had the 2015 team that overperformed. You just kind of felt like you were playing with house money there. Then you had the 2016 team miss the playoffs, and then 2017, it's like, okay, we're, this team is good. But, are they actually going to go all in? And then when you see that trade come through, you're like, oh my gosh, like, this team is a legitimate contender. And then to see it come to fruition right then, I mean, I'll never forget the image of him coming back out with the cutoff shirt in LA in, what was it, game 1, game 2 must have been game 2 of the World Series. But he comes out in his big old dad hair arms, and he's covered in whatever wires they had on him for the
hey, don't mention wires in the 2017 team, please.
Excuse me. Well, we saw those are for real. But he's doing his post-game stuff, and he comes out and he's just screaming at everybody. And it really did feel like, oh, there's like an adult on this team, like there's a veteran, because, the Astros were built of so many really good young stars, and then some kind of like put together veterans, but not like a superstar veteran. But to have him come in and be like, no, this is how it's going to work. This is how you win a World Series, or this is how you conduct yourselves in the playoffs, whatever. I think he's the most impactful Astro of this golden era. And honestly, I mean, I think if he'd won a ring in 2019, I feel like he goes in as an Astro to the Hall of Fame. Now, I'm not sure, because he spent so much time with the Tigers. Obviously, he had a ton of success here. But I mean, to me, when you look back at his career, I think he's going to be remembered just as much as an Astro as anyone else, which is remarkable considering it looked like his career was over the year before the Astros traded for him, and now he's still getting $15 million deals, 7-8 years later.
To me, it felt like, and again, I was not on the beat in 2017. I was outside looking in, but like now with like hindsight and looking at how it went down, to me, it felt like it legitimized the Astros when they acquired him. And I don't want to disrespect, Josh Reddick, co-host, who we're going to have on again soon. He signed before that 2017 season. Brian McCann signed before that like they made some additions. Carlos Beltran, they got adults. Like you said that they had an adult on the team. Like they got adults in the room. Like they had Beltran, they had Reddick, they had McCann, but Justin Verlander, like the aura and just the reputation and just the swag. And, back then he was still wearing the headphones before his starts and was the death stare. And he would, it was the death stare for him before each and every start, and just felt like it legitimized the whole thing. And it felt like he was, the missing piece. And, the debate can rage on what cap he will wear in Cooperstown. It'd be tough for me. Like the Astros there is a legitimate argument he should wear an Astros cap in Cooperstown. And there will be a lot of words written about that when that time comes. There will be a lot of debate. Something tells me he may choose to go in neutral, just to not, offend is probably a strong word, but to not, to not show favoritism to one or the other. Because look, I think he really does relish his time in Detroit. Really, he won MVP there. He became Justin Verlander in Detroit. He just elevated himself to another level in Houston. But, I looked up a couple things about just his longevity in Houston. Remember, he only pitched, I believe it was 4 full seasons in Houston, 2018, 2019, 2022, and 2024 this past year. There are only 5 pitchers in franchise history worth more wins above replacement than Justin Verlander. Roy Oswalt, Larry Dierker, Don Wilson, Mike Scott, and Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan's one of the best pitchers ever. Justin Verlander's idol. Roy Oswalt obviously was a bulldog for the Astros when maybe the team wasn't having as much success as this current era, but was, a fan favorite certainly, and maybe one of the more underrated pitchers in modern history. To me, when you start talking about those guys, like I may be ready to say that Justin Verlander may be one of the best, maybe the best pitcher in Astros history, the best pitcher that's ever worn an Astros uniform.
Yeah, and there's starting pitchers in particular can raise their value in the playoffs, right? The way that the playoff system works, where series can swing based on one game. I mean, you saw last year the Tigers can knock out the Astros just by knowing, like, oh, we're probably going to win one game because we've got, Scooble, just a superstar. Like, you can just assume that you're going to win those games. And that's what Verlander felt like for the Astros. Even though that didn't happen in the World Series for a long time, it just felt like, oh, in a 7-game series, there's 2 games where the other team has to get lucky to win, essentially. And so I think that elevates it. Obviously, Oswalt didn't get a ton of chances. Nolan Ryan didn't really either. But Verlander's playoff success is what really elevates his time with the Astros. Because, like you said, he only pitched 4 full seasons, but it feels like way more than that, just because he was in every important playoff series in really Astros history.
And I mean, just the epitome of an ace. And at a time where, look, the Astros had co-aces with him. Like, I mean, he and Garrett Cole in 2019 were unbelievable. Dallas Keuchel was still a very, very good pitcher, even when Justin Verlander came over. Lance McCullers was nasty. They've had good pitchers. Even Framber Valdez lately, like, has shown potential to be an ace, but just a different feeling when Justin Verlander rolls out there, when at Dyken Park when Eminem's blaring "Till I Collapse" is going. Like, you kind of stand at attention and you're like, oh man, like this is about to be something special, and just a different kind of feel. And who knows, you could have it again. Again, as long as Jim Crane's involved, never rule out that Justin Verlander will wear an Astros uniform again. But to me, it feels like we've seen the last of him in an Astros uniform. And if that was it, I mean, one of certainly the most impactful Astro of this golden era, but one of the more impactful players in the history of this franchise.
What was he like in interviews and in the clubhouse? You know, like what's he like? You know, obviously we've all kind of seen him on the mound and stuff, but like when he's just in the clubhouse, is he chatting up the other pitchers? Is he going over scouting reports with them? What's he like?
It's interesting you asked that. He really changed in his arc of when I covered him. So again, I covered him from 2018 till this past year. First 2 years I covered him in 2018 and 2019. It was headphones were on a start day. You did not look him in the eye. And if you did, you were going to get a death stare like you've never gotten before. Would not say he was inaccessible. He would certainly give you time, but you had to work it out with him. You didn't see him in the clubhouse a ton. Would kind of be in and out. Had some diva qualities, I would say. And I don't use diva pejoratively, but just he knew he was good. And he knew that, you know, this was a guy that had been around a while and acted as such. After he had his Tommy John surgery, and I wrote about this a good bit, and he, you know, he was open about it. Like, it really changed his perspective. Really altered his perspective a lot. You know, within his rehab, after he had the surgery and within his rehab, that's when his daughter was born. So he became a father, and I think that altered his perspective a little bit. I think, you know, having the real possibility that the game could have been taken away from him. You know, most 39-year-olds don't recover from Tommy John surgery the way Justin Verlander did. So a real possibility that could have been it for him. The last couple of seasons he was in Houston, there was a pretty distinct change. You saw him in the clubhouse a lot more, was a lot more talkative with reporters, with players, found him just being a lot more around when reporters are available. And look, he may have been like that before. The reminder that reporters are only in the clubhouse an hour a day. We can only see so much. So I don't know what he was like behind the scenes. Maybe he was like that before, but just from my vantage point, from our vantage point, really did look like, really changed his perspective a lot. He was a lot more introspective when you talk to him, a lot more kind of, you could tell like the bad starts didn't bother him as much. And that's not to say he didn't care. But even, you know, toward the end last year when the results weren't there, there was less like gruff and mad and just dismissive Verlander, and a lot more just kind of thoughtful and cerebral and introspective, and could really had a different perspective on things. So I loved covering him from the beginning. You know, interviews were excellent, like great quote, the ability to articulate what he was trying to do out there. If you had a good question, he gave you a good answer, and I'll always appreciate him for that. Something that, you know, is a little bit inside baseball, but really treated the traveling beat writers very well. And and he knew kind of who was on the road with the team, who kind of was covering them day in and day out, found a way to treat us very well. And I very much appreciated that from him. That's not something a lot of other players share. So I really, really appreciated that from Justin Verlander. I feel like I'm talking like he's deceased or retired. He's neither nor. I would not doubt the dude. He says he can pitch till he's 45. I would not doubt him at all.
It's a great park for him too, with you know, so much of
very, very difficult division. Difficult division.
Dude, he's gonna get to pitch against the Dodgers all the time. That's gonna be so much fun. I can't wait to watch that. Oh, he's gonna get booed like crazy when he goes into Dodger State. I mean, he's gonna be in a Giants uniform and he's Justin Verlander. That's gonna be awesome. But you know, if there is a weakness of Verlander, it's the home runs, right? I mean, he's a fly ball pitcher, and whatever they're calling Candlestick Park now, Oracle, maybe.
I believe it's Oracle Park. I believe it's Oracle Park.
If you know, that is a notoriously difficult place to hit home runs with the wind swirling and the fences are really far out. So I could see him, you know, even if it's over the course of a season, even if it's 6 or 7 balls that would normally leave that die at the warning track, like that's a significant change in your season. And so I think it's a good fit for him. I'm excited, and yeah, looking forward to watching West Coast games because I'm up all night anyway because I don't sleep.
You can have it side by side. The Astros will be in Seattle like the first 2 weeks of the season. You can have Astros Mariners on one TV, Giants and whoever they're playing on the other TV. You can,
and
I think
it's the first weekend he's back, right?
yes,
Yeah.
First homestand is what a first homestand, by the way. Astros open their season against the Mets and Juan Soto and possibly Alex Bregman. And then the Giants come to town with Justin Verlander. So will we see 1 or 2 tributes on the first homestand? Who can say? I don't know. But the day after Justin Verlander signed with the Giants, there was a far less notable move. Gray Kessinger, 26 guy on the bench, got DFA'd when Christian Walker take Christian Walker's spot on the Christian Walker took Gray Kessinger's spot on the roster. So the Astros traded Gray Kessinger to the D-backs after they DFA'd him just to get a prospect back. And it continued one of the most mind-boggling stats of this current iteration of the Astros. Gray Kessinger.
Ooh.
See, we're all high tech now.
We're on YouTube. If you're listening, he's pulled up a sweet side screen here of his Twitter. Check out those notifications. What are you doing?
Too many It's ARB day, baby. Too many notifications. Gray Kessinger departed the Astros with a negative B-WAR. Gray Kessinger was the Astros' second round pick when he was drafted. The Astros have not had a second round draft pick produced a positive major league B-WAR since Adrian Hauser in 2011. And Hauser got all of that with the Brewers. That is mind-boggling. For a team that has drafted that drafted Alex Bregman, drafted Carlos Correa, drafted Kyle Tucker, drafted Hunter Brown, Jeremy Pena, Lance McCullers. That's tough. That's a tough sight. And it's something that they have to rectify because you're kind of reaping what you sow now because, as we've talked about very, very frequently, they don't have anything coming up from the minor leagues. It's why they had to trade Kyle Tucker. It's why they've had to spend in free agency unwisely sometimes because they don't have anything coming. And if you're not hitting on these first couple picks in each draft, that's where the top end high talent is. And the fact that this team has not had a second round draft pick since 2011 to produce a major league positive B-WAR, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah. I mean, granted, they had a few years where they just didn't have a second round pick, right? From the sign stealing stuff. But yeah, I mean, they just, and then I feel like it also is confusing because they had a lot of like those competitive balance picks. Like I was thinking like, didn't Derek Fisher, surely he produced some WAR, but I think he was a competitive balance pick, those types of things. But I mean, it's crazy. Yeah.
All right. You ready to remember some guys?
Let's do it. It's my favorite thing.
Let's talk about some second round picks from the Astros.
Okay.
AJ Reed.
Mm-hmm. I mean, dude, I covered A&M when he was at Kentucky, and there was a weekend. He was a pitcher and first baseman in college, and there was a series where he threw like 8 shutout innings, and then the next day hit. If you've been to Bluebell Park, he hit one to the train tracks in right. It had to have been 450 foot plus. It was crazy. I've never seen anybody do that. I can't believe it didn't work out. But yes, that was rough.
Ronnie Dawson.
Oh yeah, man, he had all the tools. He was a football player, right? Didn't he have a commitment to like Georgia or something?
Well, he went to Ohio State.
Okay.
Thomas Eshelman. Phillies
the
fans
control. Yeah, the control for what we got to look up. He went to what? Cal State Fullerton.
Which Cal State Fullerton? Yes.
Okay, But I remember, first off, sweet mustache, like the orange facial. I get a very red beard, and his was like bright orange when it came in. But I think he walked like 6 dudes his last year of college. Like he just didn't walk anybody. But yes, that one, he was in the Ken Giles trade.
He was in the Ken Giles trade. Corbin Martin, speaking of Aggies.
Oh yeah. He was Diamondbacks, right? Is that where
he got them? He was a centerpiece of the Zach Greinke trade.
This
says
kind of something about my brain, man. Why do I remember that?
And that kind of leads into like how it's interesting how you talk about these draft picks. Like there is value in that he was in the Zach Greinke. He was part of the trade that got you Zach Greinke. Like he didn't pan out, and like, but he there's value in that they put him in that trade. There's value in Thomas Eshelman that they put him in the trade to get Ken Giles. It's such a hodgepodge. Remember Joe Perez?
I don't remember Joe Perez.
Two-way high school player from Florida that had every tool in the world, got a $1.7 million signing bonus, and won at bat in the big leagues.
Okay.
Do you know who Jason Schroeder is?
No.
He was a high school pitcher from Olympia, Washington, that they took in the second round of the 2018 draft. You know who they took in the third round of the 2018 draft?
No. Hit me.
Jeremy Pena. So this guy got drafted before Jeremy Pena. He retired 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just been a tough go for them at the top of the draft. And I mean, hell, this can extend to the first round. They have not drafted well in the first round recently. Forrest Whitley could make a contribution this year. He's never had a clear path to do so. Corey Lee, not really panned out a ton. You kind of start looking at some of these guys, Seth Beer. They've got to hit at the top of the draft. And that's why Dana Brown's here. Large part of the reason that Jim Crane hired Dana Brown was his drafting acumen. And he's run 2 drafts already. Walker Yannick was his first round pick last year. Bryce Matthews, his first round pick 2 years ago. I guess more importantly, we should maybe be looking at the second round picks to see if the second round picks can produce a positive Major League B WAR. But Tyler, that's the key. I mean, for them to get this back to where they want it to be, if you want to mimic the Dodgers, certainly not spending as much money or deferring as much money, but if you want to mimic the Dodgers and how they do things, which is they keep, not only can they spend a ton of money, they also can produce from they have one of the best farm systems in baseball. They are really good at drafting and developing. If you want to get there, if you want to get to where those teams are, you've got to hit at the top of the draft. Yeah,
because it's not just about the superstars, right? I mean, you can hit or miss on a first round pick. That happens to everybody, but you have to consistently produce major league talent players in the latter parts of the draft, because one, those are just the guys that fill roster spots, right? Like you've got, over the course of a season, you're going to have 60 different people play for you if you're including all the bullpen arms that you're shuttling back and forth between AAA. But that's also where you get the depth for trades. And I think that's what the Luno administration did so well was, Tyler White was a 26th round draft pick. He made it to the big leagues. Like, that's crazy. And even though you don't have an all-star career from that, it doesn't matter. Like, that's a guy that contributed to your team that you got way later in the draft. And that's just not something that, I mean, really where the Astros have made up for it is international signings, right? Like that's where they have been able to continue to be successful. Because if you look at just their draft, like, the team should just be a disaster, but they've been saved by Framber, by, Blanco and all of these guys, Urquidy, the guys like that, where you're kind of pulling them off a scrap heap essentially. But you got to be able to do that with position players. And really, I think that's where the Astros have struggled is producing serviceable big leaguers outside. Now, granted, I say that Jake Myers and Chas McCormick were late round draft picks. They're big league starters. Like that's not nothing, like that's what you have to be able to do. But you got to have 10 more of those guys that are ready to come up. And the Astros just haven't been able to do that consistently.
But you also have to have guys like Kyle Tucker and Alex Bregman that not necessarily like you can't envision people being like franchise altering cornerstones like Alex Bregman, but like you've got to have top end talent to where you don't, every time you have a player vacate a position, you have to go in free agency. Like you have to be able to have a Jeremy Pena waiting in the wings for after Carlos Correa leaves. Like it's why the Astros didn't have that when Alex Bregman, as Alex Bregman's leaving. Like they don't have that now with Kyle Tucker's leaving. They didn't have that at first base when Yuli Gurriel left, and that's why you got Jose Abreu, and that's not why you have Christian Walker. So it's a multi-pronged approach. I actually think they've done an okay job of finding the mid to late round guys from the small schools that have turned into big leaguers. Like you look at that 2017 draft, they've had 13 big leaguers from that 2017 draft, which is a huge number. But you look at it, and I think the highest WAR out of that draft is Josh Rojas, who has like 6 WAR, went in like the 28th round, and you need more hot, like you need the guys at the top of the draft to hit.
Yeah.
You're not going to hit every time like the grand slam you hit with Bregman or Tucker or Correa. And honestly, the fact that you did those have masked what the draft deficiencies have been lately. But you've got to have guys ready to go to where you're not reliant on free agency and trades to fill your roster. And it's one thing that they're going to navigate this spring. Maybe Jacob Melton comes to camp this spring, turns a bunch of heads, and they're like, you know what? We'll give you some run. Let's see if you can take over one of these outfield positions, whether it's left, right, center, whatever. Let's see if you can take it over, and we don't have to go find a Ben Gamble on the scrap heap, Jason Hayward, Taylor Trammell, or whatever his Harry Potter name is. Like you don't have to go to those guys. You can get a guy like Jacob Melton, who coincidentally was drafted in the 2nd round.
Uh-oh.
So maybe Jacob Melton breaks the
curse.
That'll be one spring training storyline to follow, and we will follow it on Crush City territory where, again, twice a week in the offseason, 3 times a week in the regular season. Josh Reddick will be back soon. He went to Disney World with his kids, so we were not going to bother Josh while he was in Disney World. He will be back this coming week. We will get Josh Reddick back. I want to get his thoughts on Justin Verlander, what it was like to be his teammate. I think he, more than anyone, would know kind of what he was like behind the scenes. We can only tell you so much. So we will have Josh Reddick back on soon, and we're working on some other guests. So get excited. Get ready, because we're going to keep coming, even though the Astros may have, tapered off a little bit with their acquisitions. Their heavy lifting's done this winter, but we're going to keep going. So rate and review us on Apple. Subscribe on YouTube, please. And we'll talk to you guys soon. See you later.
Bye.